To receive a David Ogilvy Award, one has to selflessly work for the betterment of our town, not just through preservation, but also for betterment of our community. I mean, he really, in some ways, epitomized, the kind of the whole term of "It's a Wonderful Life." I mean, he was Mr. Greenwich, and he was grateful for everything he had.
I had the pleasure of getting to know David through my mother, Sandra Hillman. The two of them were preservation soulmates. They both appreciated history, believed in stewardship, and revered those who have gone before us.
David was the definition of a gentleman. He was extremely generous and loyal to his family, friends, and town, and passionate about the causes he believed in, like preservation. He was amazingly thoughtful, articulate, and humble.
He was a gentleman and a gentleman. Humble, unassuming, gracious, the eternal optimist, positive, upbeat, generous of time and energy.
I love what Norma Bartol once called him, a real Greenwich boy. He lived in Greenwich from the time he was 5. He chose to make his living here. He raised his family. He was rooted in the special character of the town that had evolved over 3 centuries. And he wanted to make that history known to others. He chose to give back.
David, who was affectionately known by many as Mr. Greenwich, was completely devoted to Greenwich and our community. He would often say how lucky we were to live in a place like Greenwich.
He grew up in a humble but very historic home in Old Greenwich. He so adored his mother, Melinda Ogilvy, and I love the fact that he sentimentally kept her home after she passed. David's love for Greenwich coursed through his veins.
David was an important ally and inspiration for many in his work with us at the Historical Society. He ushered in an important period of corporate partnerships, and he paved the way for many successful projects and programs. He also was a sponsor of our Greenwich Landmarks program that documented and plaqued over 300 significant buildings throughout the town. It was his inspiration to see that there was a vital relationship between people's love of architecture, design, and landscape, and the Historical Society's role to preserve and to share that heritage for the future.
I witnessed David as one of our most consistent and long-term supporters. Helping to improve Greenwich for the whole community was always on David's mind.
David made so many meaningful contributions to Greenwich, but it's hard to beat the 100 Days to Save Treetops campaign he chaired to raise $11.5 million from public and private funds to permanently protect almost 100 acres on the Greenwich-Stamford border, now part of the Greater Mianus Greenway. I also think it was a very proud moment for him and a joy for all of us when he presented a Greenwich landmark plaque at an Historical Society reception to the new owners of the Treetops estate. It was one of those moments when his efforts came full circle and he passed the baton on to a new generation.
I will never forget when the Greenwich Land Trust Board was faced with the decision to approve adding the Louise Mueller Preserve to his list of protected properties. Well, David Ogilvy and other past presidents came in to present their opinions to the board. And David was so passionate and optimistic that we could make it happen. And now we have the wonderful Greenwich Land Trust headquarters in that historic house out on Round Hill.
David was inspiring in the way he lived his life and how he treated all he came in contact with. He was kind, caring, and unflappable in his preservation mission. We often heard David say, "Okay, change of plans," which phrase he had inherited from his father. For David, it showed his flexibility and adaptability and resolve in the face of challenge or opportunity. His joy was in the giving, and we all certainly benefited, as will future generations.
David stepped up. He did the hard work. He made the phone calls, rallied people and resources around important causes, and took a stand for what he believed in. He went to work for what he valued, and we have all benefited from his passion, energy, and generosity that he bestowed upon Greenwich.
When David passed away, it became immensely clear that David himself was a force in preservation. So the whole idea to come up with an award for an individual was born, and appropriately it's been called the David Ogilvy Preservation Award. David inspired a lot of people, and there's a lot of good work going on in this town right now to protect and preserve what we have here in Greenwich, which is a really special community.
What a long overdue honor for a man who spent his entire life preserving and protecting Greenwich for all of us to enjoy. Just wishing he was here.